When the song ended, there was a silence that seemed eternal to Rosé. And then Bruno asked, "What does APT mean?" And that's when everything changed. Rosé explained that APT referred to a Korean drinking game, a social tradition that was completely unknown in the West. She described how it worked. People stack their hands, sing apatu, apatu, apartment, apartment, and whoever is chosen by the number has to drink. It was simple. It was fun. It was deeply Korean. It was something she had done since she was a teenager, something all young Koreans knew, but she had never thought to share with the world. For context, she explained that Korean drinking culture is marked by an emphasis on social interaction. Friends, family, and even co-workers consume alcohol together to strengthen bonds. The apartment game was part of this tradition, a way to break the ice, create intimacy, transform strangers into friends through shared laughter and a bit of alcohol. But as she spoke, Rosé noticed something on Bruno's face. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't the condescending look she sometimes received when explaining aspects of Korean culture to Westerners. It was genuine fascination. It was recognition. Bruno Mars, who had grown up in Hawaii in a multicultural family, who understood what it meant to navigate between different cultural worlds, immediately understood what she was doing. She wasn't just sharing a game. She was sharing her identity, her vulnerability, a part of herself that the pop world hadn't seen yet. It was Rosé being authentically Korean, in a world that often asked Asian artists to be palatable and safe versions of their cultures for Western consumption. "Let's do this," said Bruno, "but let's do it in a way nobody expects." The next few days in the studio were magical and terrifying at the same time. They transformed the Korean game into a metaphor for attraction and seduction, maintaining the playful energy but adding layers of musical sophistication that were pure Bruno Mars trademark. The production grew layers, distorted guitar reminiscent of 2000s grunge, pulsating bass that made you want to dance, and over everything Rosé's sweet but bold voice singing apatu, apatu, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. But Rosé confessed years later that those were some of the most anxious days of her life. "I remember going home kind of scared. Is this okay, writing a song about a drinking game?" She wondered if she was being too casual, too irreverent, if BLACKPINK fans would understand this more relaxed version of her. Rosé's anxiety was understandable. As a BLACKPINK member, she was used to a certain type of music. Powerful, elegant, carefully constructed to impress. Did you do, kill this love, how you like that? All were statements, declarations of strength and independence. APT was the opposite of that. It was spontaneous, irreverent, almost careless in its joy. It was her being genuinely Korean in a world that expected her to be a polished, international version of herself. Bruno, noticing her anxiety, did something she would never forget. He sat at the piano and played a slow jazz version of Apatu, Apatu. "See," he said, "this is beautiful, this is music. It doesn't matter where it comes from. If it has soul, if it has truth, it's music." What they created was revolutionary in ways that neither of them initially realized. APT showed what music critics would later call the popification of K-pop. But in reality, they weren't making K-pop or traditional American pop. They were creating something completely new, a cultural hybrid that had never existed before. The song had guitar riffs reminiscent of garage rock bands, Rosé's vocals oscillating between sweet and bold like she had never done before, and Bruno Mars' unmistakable presence turning everything into pop gold. But the heart of the song remained authentically Korean. The repetitive hook apatu, apatu transformed into a global anthem that would make millions of people around the world sing a Korean word without even knowing what it meant. During recording, There was a specific moment that both Rosé and Bruno later cited as the moment they knew they had something special. It was late at night, they were tired, and Rosé was trying to nail a specific note. Instead of singing the rehearsed words, she started improvising, mixing English and Korean, shouting APT with a freedom she rarely allowed herself. Bruno stopped playing and said, "That. Exactly that. That's you." When APT was released in October 2024, the reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Within 24 hours, the song was trending in over 50 countries. Within a week, it reached the top 10 on virtually every relevant music chart worldwide. For 3 consecutive weeks, Rosé and Bruno Mars stayed at #1, surpassing even Taylor Swift and Post Malone's Fortnite, something that not even the most optimistic record label executives expected. But what really surprised wasn't just the numbers. It was how the song connected cultures. Young Americans started playing the apartment game at college parties, posting TikTok videos trying to understand the rules. Koreans were proud to see their cultural tradition celebrated globally, but in a way that didn't seem forced or exoticized. Brazilians, Europeans, Africans, Arabs, all singing APT, APT without knowing exactly what it meant, but feeling the pure, contagious energy of the song. Rosé received messages from young Asian Americans saying the song made them feel less alone, less divided between their cultures. Bruno received praise for his cultural sensitivity, for not trying to dominate the song, but rather elevate what Rosé brought. Together, they created something neither could have done alone. The live performance that solidified APT's place in history happened at the 2024 Mama Awards in Osaka on November 22, 2024. Rosé was nervous. It was the first time she would perform the song live for a predominantly Asian audience, and she didn't know how it would be received. Bruno, noticing her anxiety, did something simple but powerful. During soundcheck, he learned to say "annyeonghaseyo," "annyeonghaseyo," hello in Korean, and started the performance by greeting the audience in Korean. The performance was electric. Watching Rosé sing in Korean and English while Bruno Mars accompanied her with his characteristic movements, but adapted to give her space to shine, the audience realized they were witnessing something historic. It wasn't just a collaboration. It was a cultural bridge built through pop music, proof that true art transcends boundaries when it comes from a place of authenticity. A simple text message, just a few words typed on a phone. But sometimes a single message can change the course of 2 careers forever, create one of the biggest global hits of recent years, and reveal a secret that neither artist imagined could connect completely opposite cultures. What you're about to discover about APT by Rosé and Bruno Mars goes far beyond a musical collaboration. It's the story of how a Korean drinking game that most of the world had never heard of transformed into the anthem that dominated global charts for consecutive months. It's about anxiety, fear of judgment, cultural identity, and the courage to be vulnerable when the whole world is watching. This is a story that began with an obsessed fan, a brave text, and a question that changed everything. What does APT mean? To understand how APT was born, you need to know the Rosé the world doesn't see. Behind the flawless BLACKPINK image, behind the millions of followers and international stages, there's a girl who grew up between 2 worlds. New Zealand, where she was born, and South Korea, where her life was shaped by trainee years. But there's something few people know about Rosé. She was always an obsessive Bruno Mars fan, not just a casual admirer, a true fanatic. During her trainee years, when the pressure was unbearable and days dragged on in windowless practice rooms, she escaped by listening to "Just the Way You Are" repeatedly. Bruno Mars was her secret refuge, her escape valve in a world that demanded constant perfection. She memorized every riff, every stage movement, every interview. In the YG Entertainment dorms, when other trainees slept, Rosé stayed awake watching Bruno Mars performances on YouTube, dreaming of an impossible day when maybe, just maybe, they could meet. She knew his songs better than her own compositions, sang along with his vocals on headphones until the early hours, imagining what it would be like to be in the same studio as her idol. What she didn't know is that Bruno Mars also knew her work. Since 2018, when BLACKPINK exploded globally, Bruno began noticing Rosé's unique voice, the way she could convey emotion, even singing in English as a second language. He kept this to himself, like a professional secret that few around him knew. In interviews, when asked about new artists that caught his attention, he mentioned obvious names. But internally, he was watching this young Korean woman who could make millions of people sing along without even fully understanding what she was saying. The year was 2024. Rosé was at a crucial moment in her career, preparing her first complete solo album after years of fan speculation. The pressure was immense. Every artistic decision was scrutinized, every move analyzed by global media. She was working in her Los Angeles studio, trying to find the right direction for her solo sound, when her phone buzzed. A simple, direct message. "I'm interested in working with you. Sender, Bruno Mars." Rosé stared at the phone screen for long minutes, not believing what she was seeing. She read the message 5, 10, 15 times, took a screenshot, deleted the screenshot for fear someone would see, took another. Her first reaction wasn't euphoria, it was pure panic. She immediately called her best friend, stuttering in Korean. "He texted me. Bruno Mars texted me. What do I do? What do I respond? What if it's a prank?" For 2 hours, she couldn't respond. She wrote and deleted dozens of drafts. "Hi, I'd love to work with you too," seemed too casual. "Thank you so much for reaching out. I'm a huge fan," seemed too fangirl. "When and where?" seemed too eager. In the end, she simply wrote, "Let's do it." But it wasn't a prank. Bruno Mars had decided it was time to do something different, something nobody expected from him. He was tired of obvious collaborations, predictable duets that dominated the industry. He wanted to work with someone who brought new energy, a different cultural perspective. And Rosé was exactly that. Talented enough to be on the same technical level as him, but with a completely different cultural background that could create something truly unique. The meeting happened at a discreet studio in West Hollywood. Rosé arrived an hour before the scheduled time, too nervous to stay home. She brought some demos she had produced, including a strange, almost experimental song based on something she did with friends when they went out drinking in Seoul. She wasn't sure if she should show that specific demo. It was too personal, too specifically Korean, too risky. When Bruno arrived, he didn't arrive as a superstar. He arrived as a genuine musician, carrying his own equipment, greeting everyone in the studio by name. The chemistry was immediate, not romantic, professional and creative in a way that rarely happens in the industry. They talked about music, about growing up between different cultures, about the pressure of representing global expectations. Bruno talked about Hawaii, about growing up in a multicultural family. Rosé talked about New Zealand, about Korea, about never feeling 100% from anywhere. And then Rosé, gathering all her courage, said, "I have a song, but I don't know if you'll understand it. It's about a game we play in Korea." She played the demo. It was raw, almost amateur, recorded on her phone one night when she was drunk with friends at a karaoke in Gangnam. The melody was based on a tune she hummed when playing Apartment Game with her Korean friends, a drinking game she never imagined could interest anyone outside Korea. Bruno listened attentively, without interrupting, nodding his head to the rhythm. During the performance, there was a moment when Rosé stopped singing and let the audience continue with "APT, APT." Thousands of Korean, Japanese, Thai, Filipino voices singing along, and Rosé got emotional on stage. Later she said, "I never imagined that a song about a silly game we play when we're drunk could make so many people feel connected." But perhaps the most touching moment happened after the performance. Rosé was backstage when a fan approached, a young Korean American who had flown from Texas to watch the Mama Awards. She said in English, interrupted by tears, "Thank you for not making us choose. Thank you for showing that we can be both." The fan was referring to the dilemma many young people in the Asian diaspora face, the pressure to choose between their cultural heritage and their Western identity. APT showed that you don't have to choose. You can be authentically cultural and globally relevant. You can honor your traditions and still create something new. In the months that followed, APT didn't just dominate music charts, it changed conversations. American television shows began discussing Korean drinking culture. Universities included the song in courses about cultural globalization. The apartment game became a global phenomenon, with official rules being translated into dozens of languages. Rosé, in an interview months later, reflected on the song's impact. "I grew up thinking I had to choose an identity. When I was with Koreans, I tried to be more Korean. When I was with Westerners, I tried to be more Western. APT taught me that magic happens when you stop trying to be what people expect and start being who you really are." Bruno Mars, in turn, said, "Rosé taught me that real collaboration isn't about two famous people recording together. It's about two cultures meeting and creating something neither could have created alone. It's about learning, not just teaching." The song also opened doors for other East-West collaborations. Suddenly, Asian artists no longer needed to westernize their sound for global success, and Western artists began seeking Asian collaborators not as exotic novelties, but as legitimate creative partners. Today, 2 years after its release, APT has accumulated over 2 billion streams, earned 5 Grammy nominations, and is studied in music schools as an example of successful cultural fusion. But for Rosé, the biggest success isn't the numbers or awards. "The biggest success," she said in a recent interview, "is when I see young Korean women being proudly Korean in their artistic work. When I see that they don't feel they need to hide where they came from to be globally accepted. If APT did that for even one person, it was all worth it." And Bruno Mars, who has always been known for his generosity with collaborators, went above and beyond in his praise. "Rosé didn't do me a favor by appearing on my song. She gave me a gift. She taught me that there's still so much to learn, still boundaries to break, still music to discover. At 39, she made me feel like a young musician, discovering music for the first time. The truth is that APT represents something much bigger than a successful musical collaboration. It's a case study about authenticity in an era of manufactured music. It's proof that global audiences are hungry for something real, something genuine, even when, especially when, it comes from cultures they don't know. It's the story of a young woman who had the courage to share something deeply personal and cultural with the world, even with fear of judgment. It's about an established artist who chose to step out of his comfort zone to create something genuinely new. It's about how vulnerability, when combined with exceptional talent and mutual respect, can create magic. But perhaps the most powerful aspect of APT is what it says about identity in the global era. Rosé could have chosen to make a safe song for her more mainstream solo debut, something that fit perfectly with industry expectations, something that didn't risk alienating any audience. Instead, she chose to celebrate a specific and unique part of her cultural heritage, risking everything on a bet that could have been completely misunderstood. The result was not just one of the most beloved and culturally significant collaborations of recent years, but also a song that opened doors for future East-West collaborations, showing that cultural authenticity isn't a barrier to global success. It's exactly what the world was waiting for. Today, when you hear APT playing in a bar in Sao Paulo, in a club in Tokyo, at a college party in Los Angeles, or at a wedding in Mumbai, you're hearing more than a catchy pop song. You're hearing proof that when artists have the courage to be genuinely themselves, to share their most intimate traditions, to risk everything in the name of authenticity, that's when true magic happens. You're hearing two musical worlds that met, not to conquer each other, but to create something new together. You're hearing the sound of barriers being broken, cultures celebrating each other, a global generation that's tired of choosing between their heritage and their futures. And perhaps, most importantly, you're hearing the soundtrack to a new era, an era where being different isn't a disadvantage, where being authentically cultural is a superpower, where sharing your most personal traditions with the world isn't risky, it's revolutionary. And you? Have you ever had the courage to share something deeply personal with the world, even with fear of judgment? Have you ever risked being completely authentic when everyone expected you to follow the script? What's your apartment game? That part of your identity you're afraid to show, but that might be exactly what the world needs to see. Leave your story in the comments, because if APT taught us anything, it's that our differences aren't obstacles to connection. They're exactly what makes connection possible. If this story touched you in some way, it's because this video needed to reach you. And if you have the courage to be authentic like ROSÉ did, subscribe to the channel. But only if you're ready for more stories that will make you question everything you thought you knew about music, culture, and the courage to be genuinely yourself.